Alright, what's up guys? Got another YJ project update for you. This comes after a slight mishap that I had a couple weeks ago. Basically, I went to do a burnout in it, and the welds on the leaf spring perches broke, and the rear end pointed almost straight up and spat the drive shaft out the back, ripped the U-joint straps apart, and it ended up denting one of the ears on the drive shaft for that U-joint. So right now the drive shaft is at a shop. It's going to get probably that yoke replaced, and then I'll be able to slap that back in there. While I was under there, I decided to put a new transpan gasket and a filter in because I originally dropped the transmission to replace the front pump seal because I believe that is what is causing my ATF leak. Well, I do not have whatever special tool you need to do that. So I'm not going to be doing that. I just tightened up the bolts on the front pump a little bit, and gonna hope that fixes it. But I also wanted to do a pan gasket because the guy who rebuilt this trans used a cork gasket with no sort of sealant on it, so I think that was leaking too. So I put a Wix trans filter in there and a new gasket that came with it because I wanted to do the filter too, because the fluid that came out of the dipstick tube hole looked pretty cloudy with friction material, and there was a good amount of friction material in the pan, no chunks of anything. I did cut the filter open and I took it off, but there was like a clump of like sand and like this weird like hair material on it. I don't think that's anything crazy. That might have just been dirt that was in the transmission, because the transmission was, you can kind of see it down there. But it's nothing crazy. It's nothing really alarming to me. The transmission was shifting perfectly, so I don't really care, but I'm glad that I replaced that. You might be able to notice that I got a set of fender flares. I picked up a set of fender flares off of Marketplace for 50 bucks, which is an immaculate, like, that's an incredible steal for even like stock fender flares for a YJ for a full set. But these are wide fender flares. They're best tops. Best Top doesn't make them anymore, so that's kind of a cool factor. It did come with the fronts, but I ended up putting the front on this side, and it overhangs the front tire by about an inch, so it kind of looks a little goofy. And plus, having a wide front fender flare on there makes it a real pain in the butt to get any work done on the engine bay. So I just decided to nix that, and I'm only running the rears because that's really where I really care about the law. At least in New Jersey, you can't have wheels sticking outside the body more than a certain amount. I'm sure the fronts are probably past that amount too, but it's a lot less noticeable. But you know, the rears, pretty much the whole tire sticks out past the body, so adding the fender flares makes it look pretty normal. You know, this tread is covered by the fender flare pretty much the whole way around, so there's really no major risk of like me picking up a rock and then tossing it into somebody's car or onto somebody on the sidewalk or something like that. And honestly, that's like the other half of the reason, is just, you know, for other people's safety. But yeah, I was a little bummed out when the rear end decided to after the burnout. You know, obviously I was pissed. I got it all back together. I ended up, I don't have the light anymore, but I ended up cutting my shock mounts, the leaf spring plates with the shock mount on them. I cut them and angled them down more, so now the shock isn't at such a harsh angle with the stud. So that should be good. That's just something I've been wanting to do. So since I had to take them off anyway, I decided, you know, I'm gonna do that now rather than, you know, have to do it again later and have to take the U-bolts off. Yeah, I did the transpan and filter, and I had to get a new U-joint, U-bolt for it because the one that was on there, the threads were stripped. And I'm trying to think, what else did I get for it? I think that was pretty much it. Like I said, I got that front pump seal, but I didn't put it on, and I have a new U-joint for the drive shaft, but I think I'm gonna have them put a new U-joint in it while it's there, just that I don't have to do it. I'm really glad that I found that drive shaft shop, because otherwise I probably would have just ended up getting a new drive shaft made. Which sounds stupid, and you know, I admit that is stupid, but that was like the first thing that popped into my head when I had that happen. Well, I didn't notice that the drive shaft had a ding in it until I got the rear end put back together, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna look at replacing that U-joint on the rear, and then I went and looked, and the one ear is like completely wrapped around the side of the U-joint. So I wouldn't be able to replace the U-joint. I might have been able to put new U-joint caps onto the old U-joint and then slap it in, but I wouldn't want to do that. I would rather just have it rebuilt properly. But for the time that it was driving, it was pretty good. No major complaints. Really, the only kind of questionable thing I noticed was whenever I would get off the line, or like even like floor it, it would kind of like lift up and pull to the left, if that makes sense. I don't know if that had to do with the shock angle or what, but that was just something I noticed. And you know, when I re-welded the rear end, I made sure that the gap from the backing plate to the leaf spring was the same on either side. So that should be, the rear end should be nice and seated in the proper alignment now. Yeah, the engine has a lot of power. It sounds great. No, again, no complaints with the engine. It does have an oil leak, which looks like it's coming from the rear main seal, but also looks like it's also coming from the distributor seal, which is annoying because I already have that double sealed. But that's besides the point. But yeah, no, otherwise no complaints with the engine. It runs awesome. I haven't had any issues with it, knock on wood. But transmission was also working great, apart from the fact that it leaks. Like a little slightly longer term, the manual steering is fine for me. I don't have any complaints with that. I mean, it's manual steering. It sucks in parking lots, but like, you know, driving it normally, you really don't notice it. And it's just one less thing that I have to worry about leaking. As far as once I get this thing back together and driving, I'm probably going to drive it around for a little while until I'm basically going to drive it until it gets too cold for me to want to drive it. Or if the weather is just consistently rainy. But until then, I'm going to be putting as many miles on this car as I can until winter comes. And then when winter does come, I'll be saving up for a top and maybe a few other things. but mainly a top for it. I want to get a soft top for it because, you know, it would be nice to be able to drive this thing when it's not perfectly sunny out. That, and it would be nice to be able to like park this somewhere and not worry about someone just leaning in and grabbing something out of it or trying to hotwire it or something. But yeah, so that's gonna be it for this video. I'll probably make another video when I have the Jeep running and driving again. But yeah, otherwise I'll see you till then.